Hello, welcome to CGTN's special program, Shaping a Shared Future, China's Next 5 Years. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing. In October, the 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China convened its fourth plenary session. During the meeting, the recommendations of the CPC Central Committee for formulating the 15th five-year plan for economic and social development were adopted. China is the world's second-largest economy and the largest socialist country. To gain a broader international perspective, we've invited 6 leaders of socialist parties from Germany, Hungary, Denmark, Finland, Italy, and the United Kingdom. Together, we'll explore the outcomes of the fourth plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee and China's experience in global governance. Thank you very much for joining us. So I'd like to start with the biggest challenges faced by the world's socialist movement nowadays. Let me start with you, Mr. Mantasalo.
I think that one of the biggest challenges is that how we can involve young people into socialism movement, that how we can let them have new ideas to implementation and to bring the fresh air into the movement. I think that is one of the biggest topics and challenges also.
Mr. Gibelli?
I would say that the biggest topic is to stop the imperialistic forces in preparing a next world war and to fight in our countries for friendship and peace with Russia and China.
What's your take on this?
I agree totally about what Patrick said about the danger for war, the need for struggling against militarization of the society, and also the need to organize the working class. I think that it's a very, very big question that the working class organization, not only in the Communist Party, but also as a class, in its own organizations, all these organizations are being undermined, and it's a very big problem.
What about you, Ms. Bennett?
Well, I think that the socialist movement in each individual country faces its own challenges and problems, but at the same time there are also some, as you've intimated, common issues, and within that context I completely agree with what the other speakers have said. I'd just add that some of the other challenges, and of course they are all interrelated, is that we have to work out how to deal with a particularly capricious and unpredictable US administration. We have to learn to put aside some past differences which may not be relevant anymore in the current situation whilst maintaining our principles, and we have to deal with new issues on the agenda and new social forces which were not presented as challenges to previous generations.
What about you, Mr. Thume?
The capitalist world is in crisis, and not only from economic point of view, but also from political point of view. People do not believe in the existing organization. We think that the Communist Party should give a perspective how to organize the societies in the new circumstances. And I think that from this point of view, socialism with Chinese characteristics is a good example for many of us.
Mr. Marinjo.
Yes, the main contradiction of this area is characterized by the imperialist forces trying to stop the rise of multipolar war. So from our perspective, from Western perspective, our main goal is to stop the more aggressive wings of imperialist forces. And from the other part of the world, maybe let this multipolar world be guided by the socialist countries and powers.
And you're all leaders of socialist parties to a certain capacity. What do you make of party building? It's a big issue for any given political party, to be honest. Internal discipline, strict discipline, and democracy within the party, Mr. Warhoff-Madsen.
Well, I think that the main question is to mobilize and to organize. Of course, you need discipline, but discipline is something created concretely in the struggle, in the work, and it's something you cannot do it in bureaucratic manners.
It's an evolving process.
It's an evolving process, and it is formed concretely in the struggle.
What about party democracy?
I think that party democracy is also a very concrete thing. Each party has its own inner democracy, according to the culture of the country, according to the traditions of this particular communist party in this country. So it is a very different for different countries.
It's a dialectic relation between democracy and discipline, because you need to discuss in a broad discussion in the whole party about things you will to do. But if you decide with majority you will these things do, then all have to do it, because in every other case you will not be able to organize the working class, and the party is not the goal for the party. The party's goal is organizing the working class, and therefore the party needs discipline.
So in this context, let's expand the scope a little bit. What do you make of China's whole process, people's democracy?
I'm very impressed of this people's democracy, and I'm very impressed about the fight against
corruption?
Corruption, yes. Because I think my interpretation is that this is in China one of the main topics of the class struggle of today. And if the party loses in the fight against the corruption, the party will lose their relation to the working class and to the masses, and then socialism will not be able to be built.
So what do you make of this, Mr. Bennett? You've been living in Westminster system for so long.
Well, I didn't have a choice in the matter. But and I think this whole question of whole process, people's democracy is very important. As our comrade from Hungary just pointed out, I think very correctly, that the whole political system is in crisis in the Western countries, and we see that in country after country, with entry of far-right parties into government, with political parties with long histories which were almost hegemonic in national life in Western countries, just collapsing. And President Xi Jinping made a very important point once when he said that it's not real democracy if people are only mobilized at the time of voting, and if that mobilization only takes the form of empty promises. And actually, I think President Xi, although I know he would have no wish to interfere in our internal affairs, could be describing the situation in Britain very exactly. We have a situation now in Britain where we have a government which was elected by 34% of the people who turned out to vote, but 19% of the electorate, yet they have a massive majority in Parliament. Their popularity is the lowest level since figures were recorded for the popularity of governments in Britain. They're introducing flagship policies that were not in their election manifesto. They're not delivering on their manifesto promises. They're completely out of tune with public sentiment on the question of Palestine and the war in Gaza, and so on. And I think that the Chinese system of whole process people's democracy is also not perfect. It's something that's in motion. It's something that's developing, being applied, being tested, and being improved. But the more time goes on, I think it will be one more example of how the development of socialism in China will become increasingly attractive to people, even in the advanced capitalist countries, because it involves people it involves people at every stage of the political process and the problems of their daily lives. As you know, the Communist Party of China just held its very important fourth plenum of the 20th Central Committee, and the key issue there was to develop the guidelines for the next 5-year plan. And reading President Xi's speech there, you can see that actually several million suggestions were actually incorporated into that final document. This is, in Britain, the presentation of the budget is with a secrecy but leaks to the press that's developed almost into a circus, and you couldn't have a stronger contrast in the two political systems of which one is actually serving the people and which one isn't.
I'd like to follow up on your thoughts on the CPC Central Committee's recommendations on formulating China's 15th five-year plan. Very straightforward, putting people-centered development at its core. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Mattisson?
I think that it's a great inspiration for every country around the world. And I think that the best kind of democracy is when it builds on local level, possibly than ever when people can, join the process in their, own perspective and they give the ideas and to reflect on their daily problems, as you mentioned, in this process of building documents and new policies.
Could you be a little bit specific on the socio-economic level? Because ultimately, at least in China, the development is for the sustainable benefit and welfare of the people.
Yes, I think that it should be on all levels, of course, and it should be one of the main focuses of the movements and of the party, that the socio-economical status and also the level of participatory in society should grow in the people. So I think that China is showing great example in that.
What's your take on this, Mr. Marinjo?
I'm very impressed about the results of the Fourth Plenary Session, both for the involvement of people. I read about 3 million suggestions rise from the grassroots, and it's a way to concrete implement democracy in China. But also I was impressed how the outlook is shifting, putting people in the center. That means that here you are preparing a great redistribution of wealth that is absolutely the opposite of what's happening in Europe and in the West now, when we have a real polarized society with a few couple of rich people can grasp all the richness produced. So that's very impressive for me, and it means that probably now in China there is a process to build a very strong welfare state with a universal aspect that became China most close to its goal to build an harmonious and prosperous society.
Still focusing on the socio-economic level, Mr. Duma, what do you make of China's bid in dealing with the relationship between an efficient market and a well-functioning government?
I think that the decision of the plenary meeting of the Communist Party of China has a theoretical and practical importance. 35 years ago, the Eastern European countries changed socialism into capitalism, and everybody believed that market economy is better than planned economy. Now we can see that planned economy can be a very good instrument to regulate the market processes, and it is the theoretical basis of the Chinese model. And the second one, the concrete experience, you could demonstrate in the last 4 years that, yes, China achieved great achievements. The standard of living of the people is rising. China strengthened its defense capacity, could solve such problems like rural poverty, COVID, and so on. And there is a confidence in the future. Now, really, Chinese people can say that yesterday I lived worse, now I am living better than yesterday, but I know that in the future, tomorrow, I will live better than today. I think that it is a feeling that we, at least Hungarian people, don't have in Hungary.
You'd like to pitch in?
Yes, because when I read the materials of the Fourth Plenum, it struck me that China is very well aware about this very turbulent and unforeseeable international situation in which it is living, and it is developing itself. And it struck me that the guidance, the development direction, which are proposed to the People's Congress, which will decide upon it next year, the direction of development is a kind of way of, in a socialist manner, to cope with this very difficult international situation. Now we have spoken about Trump, and we have spoken about, everyone speaks about tariff wars and so on. I think this situation in the world, it could not be spoken about only about Trump, but it's a kind of transition which is taking place in the world from one situation to another, because the American empire, if you call it like that, is striking back, because it is getting weaker and weaker. And when it strikes back, it's very dangerous. And it's in this situation that China needs to have the possibility for a peaceful development, and to have the possibility to develop itself in peace. And that's, I think it's a very precondition for this whole planning situation in China. And that's also why China foreign policy is very intertwined and deeply linked with the internal economic development strategy.
Talking about the uncertainties faced by this world right now, let's focus on the world economy a little bit more. Rising protectionism and unilateralism is basically threatening the sustainability of trade, of stable supply and industrial chains nearly in every country in this world. Yet China has vowed to continue its high quality opening up. What's your reading into this promise, Mr. Bennett?
Well, I think, again, this is just another example of the fact that we have a situation in the world where there are really two very stark, very different alternatives on display. There is, and President Xi also made this point quite firmly in one of his speeches at the recent APEC summit in the Republic of Korea, where he said that hegemonism goes in one direction and multilateralism goes in another. And I think that the kind of policies that are being put forward of tariff wars, protectionism, hegemonistic bullying in the international economic system, chip wars, and so on, they're causing problems, and they're inflicting damage on every country. Again, as President Xi and other Chinese leaders have always pointed out, that there are no winners in trade wars. But the biggest damage is going to be inflicted on the United States itself. And I think one of the reasons for that is, long ago, Chairman Mao wrote an article, the title is "Don't Hit Out in All Directions." Now, one thing, I don't know if President Trump read his own book, The Art of the Deal, or not, but I'm sure he didn't read this article of Chairman Mao's, otherwise he wouldn't be doing what he's doing. Because the thing about what the United States under the present administration is doing is it's not only attacking the would-be or alleged adversaries of the United States, some of the harshest treatment is being meted out to the closest and best allies of the United States, like, dare I say it, Denmark, but Canada, for example. Canada, in some respects, has been hit with higher tariffs than China, and this is a very foolish action. And the rebound, of course, again, has been seen in Korea in the last couple of days. President Xi had what appears to be a very good positive meeting with Prime Minister Carney of Canada. The new Canadian government wants to turn a page in its relationship with China and bring the bad period to a close, we hope. There can be many reasons for that, but one of the key reasons is that leaders throughout the Western world, across Europe, but also in Canada and Australia and so on, are suddenly realizing that all of their strategy was based on the idea that the United States was a reliable ally. And there is now this almost shock and panic among some of the leaders in the Western countries that they suddenly realize the United States is far from an ally or a friend that you can always rely on. And actually, even though there are fundamental differences in political system, worldview, and so on between China and the Western countries, it's China that increasingly presents itself as the force for stability, as a reliable partner, and also a country that is not two-faced, that states what it believes and carries it through into practice.
And against all those headwinds, China and Hungary actually have achieved quite some good results of cooperation and bilateral trade, right, Ms. Tu?
I think that the cooperation between Hungary and China is a good example for every country. Hungary is a small country in the middle of Europe. We are members of the European Union, but at the same time, we need contacts to the eastern part of the world. And that's why the Hungarian government declared the so-called policy of opening to the east. It means that we would like to build up bridges to China, to Russia, and to Asia, and to all these countries in this region. And it is an important element of the national development of Hungary. And now we understand that beside the economic side of the cooperation, there is a good possibility for political cooperation. You know, everybody is concerned because of the possibility of a global war. And I think that Hungary and China are doing their best to prevent the war. Last year, President Xi Jinping visited Hungary, and besides Hungary, only France and Serbia. It was quite a clear expression of the desire of the Chinese side to involve these countries in their efforts to build up a new world. And the third element, I think that now Chinese and Hungarian people begin to understand each other better than before. Earlier, Hungarian people, and first of all intellectuals, were afraid of socialism with China's characteristics. Now there is a real interest, and they understand that China can solve the same problems better than we in Western and Central Europe can solve our problems. And that's why there is a rising interest to study the experience of socialism with China's characteristic.
We focus on China's next stage development, and it's widely expected that the new quality productive forces is going to be main driver in that bid. Mr. Maggio, what do you make of the new quality productive forces in China? Is it only about something new, or it's still about, it's a holistic approach, also about upgrading traditional industries into a creative force in the future?
I believe that China, to reach its goal of modernization and world modernization, needs to jump a step in the scale of development of its own forces. That's why probably China's government is focusing on the new productive forces as a way and tool to encounter and to reach the new opportunity created by new technologies in order to grow up in the process of development. But this angle doesn't mean that the only way to reach modernization is to develop the industry. Yes, it's a tool, a very fundamental tool, but the modernization includes an holistic way. That means develop the whole society, the well-being of people, including finding an equilibrium between the new development and the traditional core and traditional culture. This kind of reaching equilibrium is the new challenge, or one of the challenges that China is facing nowadays.
What's your take on this, Mr. Mattasoli?
I think that the example of China in this, developing the new production and high production forces is that how we can take the technology to the better use of humankind, and to, in that sense, give new tools and new ways of working into the working life of people, and the technological development and use of AI, for example, and in that sense, how we develop the more fair and just use of AI. I think that China has taken a very leading role in that globally.
So let's talk about AI. Before we common people get to know deep into those technical jargons, there has been this widespread anxiety around the world about, will AI take our jobs? So this leads to a deeper question in a Marxist context, if you will. Ms. Woltoft-Masson, earlier you emphasized the importance of the working class.
Yes.
So how will artificial intelligence affect workforce, the working class in the future? Because after all, it's about the very nature of labor in the future, which is a defining feature in historical materialism. Well, what's your take on this, Mr.
New productive forces are not bad or good, they are real. And the problem is that the circumstances of the society decide whether they help people or they damage people. So
are you talking about the redefinition of labor in the future?
Sure. You have a redefinition of labor since the beginning of capitalism. So, and
it's been going on for centuries
artificial intelligence means that many processes who has been in the heads of people could now be automized. And under capitalistic circumstances, I'm sure that will cause a big count of jobless people, a big count of people who lose their salaries. But we should look from the other side. What could artificial intelligence do for us? We can have more free time. We can have a development for all the people in all the countries of the world. We have poorness. We have many, many poorness, and we can get away from this poorness with these new productive forces, but not if the productive forces are owned by some monopoles. They must be owned by the people.
And that's exactly why China has proposed to build artificial intelligence into a public good for all the people in the world. What's your take on this, Mr. Bannon?
Well, I think that's a very important point. What this discussion reminds me of is actually the start of the reform and opening up period in China. And Deng Xiaoping said that there are markets under socialism, there are markets under capitalism, and there were markets before capitalism, and there can be markets under socialism too. So the fundamental question is not, is AI a good thing or a bad thing? First of all, as Patrick said, it is a real thing, whether it's good or bad, and that's the starting point. So we have to, again, as Chinese comrades say, proceed from reality in everything we do. But it's the question is not the nature of AI, it's the question of the nature of the state and society, and who the state and society serves. And just as Patrick said, that AI can create a situation where people have more, it can create a situation under capitalism where people will lose their jobs. It can create a situation under socialism where people have much more fulfilling lives. When Marx wrote about a future communist society where people could, study in the morning and hunt in the afternoon. Well, hunting is probably a bit more controversial these days than it was in the 19th century. But the essential point is still there. And when Marx said it, it might have seemed a very utopian or idealist conception, but the new quality productive forces and the revolutions that we're seeing in production are starting to make this kind of thing a real possibility, so long as it's actually working people and not a handful of so-called tech bros sitting at Trump's inauguration that are actually in the driving seat of society. And to cap on your last point, obviously it creates the possibility that these benefits can be shared not just in a handful of rich countries, but throughout the world. That countries throughout the global South can make a leapfrog in development, and these things can be shared on an equal and equitable basis, which obviously is a key aspect of China's global AI initiative.
Mr. Maring-Zhou, you mentioned the context of Chinese modernization quite a lot in our earlier discussions. So let's take a bird view of the process of Chinese modernization, if you will. What do you think it's different from modernization in the Western context here? Not judging, just tell us the difference you've got.
That's a very tricky question, since the discussion on modernization divides the universities, professor and everything, since there are some common aspects among the modernization of different countries. That means, for example, starting from a backyard situation to a developed society. But of course there are differences, and what I see is that China stresses every time that its own path to modernization doesn't mean westernization. And what are the differences? I think basically is in the is in the way how the fruits of this modernization are redistributed among the society. If this modernization serves from the countries and people richness and developed, or to a private interest. We were before talking about AI. That's a very, how to say, an example very interesting from my view, because the AI model from China is based on open. So it's an open code that can be used by everything. It's based on the idea that is an open asset for everybody. And from philosophical point of view, the Chinese AI is based on general views. On the West, we have a private code used by private company that uses all the data of people in order to increase their profits. So that difference shows how in the process of modernization and reaching new level of development, people is at center of the interest or is at center of exploitation. That's the main drive difference among the two ways of modernization.
You'd like to pitch in, Mr. Kibeli?
Yes, I would like to have in the Western countries one time a government who says we want to eliminate poorness. And we want to eliminate poorness without to exploit other countries and other people. And I would like to have a government who does not say it only, who does do it. And this is the difference between the Chinese way and the way in the Western imperialistic countries.
Well, concerning its own modernization process, China has made it very clear that it will be an environmentally sustainable one. It will be no longer pollution first, salvaging later approach. So, and actually in global governance, environmental protection, climate change, dealing with climate change are common consensus. So do you think actually China and West can transcend some ideological barriers to actually work on this and reach some substantial results, Mr. Mantasol?
I think that the similarities between Western countries and China is that we have a discussion about climate environment, that it's not something that is that doesn't rely just on researchers or academic world's views, but the debate about climate and environment now in every sector of societies, and it's a good thing. But the differences are that is there real action ongoing? And as a European, I must say that European Union doesn't take real action. I think that it's quite clear for many of us, and also the speed is the difference between China and the Western world. In Finland, we have this goal of carbon neutrality in 2030, but at the moment the right-wing government is saying that, oh no, we can't make it. Then we must maybe keep the goal, but not do anything, but or just leave the goal. But what China is doing is that China has a long-term strategy how to combat climate crisis, and it's also in cooperation and helping other countries to do the same. And it's not just based on a few years perspective, it's a long perspective that how we want to achieve the positive changes into people's lives at the same time when we are dealing with global climate crisis.
You'd like to pitch in, Mr. Tuma?
I think that now everybody would like to save the climate and better circumstances for the humanity. But it is impossible to discuss this question separately from other questions. Last year I visited Shenzhen and Xiamen, and we could see how China develops this region. And this region is twice or three times larger than Hungary and Romania together. And they plan not only defending the nature, but they develop transport, they develop educational system, industrial system. It means that a complex solution of the future development. And I would like to add one more aspect which is very important. We can speak about climate and about defending nature, but how to defend the nature when we invest a lot of money into defense and into war.
Yeah. That was exactly my point of view.
Yes. War is the biggest climate killer in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah? And NATO causes the war in Ukraine. Yeah? And NATO forces the war in Ukraine. And my government forces the war in Ukraine. And so they can discuss about climate change, but they should stop war before they discuss about climate change, because war is the biggest climate killer.
If we take a look at a big picture of the changes in the post-Second World War order as we know it, would you say multipolarization is definitely the way forward, Mr. Bennett?
At the start of reform and opening up, Deng Xiaoping said that China could have between 30 to 50 years of relative peace in which it could concentrate on development. And that basic situation lasted for about 40 years, right in the middle of his prediction. So he really got it quite right. But what's happening now with the rise of China, the whole global south is also rising in its wake, and we're seeing new structures that are emerging to, of course, not to replace but to complement the existing structures of BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and so on. We have already the BRICS have now a higher GDP than the G7, and countries are queuing up to join or to have partnership status with the BRICS or with the SCO and so on. So this new multipolar world, is is taking shape before our eyes.
I'm glad you mentioned the rise of the global south, because in this process, China has been advocating true multilateralism. It's not only about several countries or countries getting together with one superior country telling others what to do and they must obey the order. It's about true multilateralism based on equal footing, mutual respect and win-win results. What's your reading into this historical process, Mr. Mantasalo?
We see globally that the old colonial powers are threatened at the moment by the rise of global south, and of course they feel threatened because they cannot longer control the global south anymore, and I think that it's a very we are at the crossroad of big historical changes at the moment in this question, and it was very inspiring to hear in one event in Finland where I heard from representatives of, for example, African civil societies. They said that they want to take inspiration of many international forums and groups that has been in the world and is working nowadays, and they want to take all the good sides and not implement the bad sides. And I think that it sounds very clear, and I think that it can be implemented also basically that way, that the rise of global south means that they have seen what has happened in other regions, and they can take all the good experiences and not do the same mistakes. And countries of global south are now rising to the same level of cooperation with other countries, and I think that in what the old colonial powers should at least do is to respect that and stop the trying of exploitation of global south.
Yes.
Yes, I would just want to add something, because I think that in a multipolar world, to a multipolar world belongs multilateralism. That's a natural consequence in a political sense. And if you see the Chinese global governance initiative, I think it's a blow in the face to US imperialism, because US imperialism is threatening countries all over the world with interventions, with wars, and other things. With your concrete now, there's actually a war going on from the United States of America towards Venezuela. They are attacking poor fishermen in the boats in the sea. And if you see what is the core point of the United Nations Charter, which this year is 80 years old, and what is the core point of the Chinese Global Governance Initiative, it is the rights of nations to self-determination. The rights of every single people and nation to choose its own path of development and choose its own way of living. So I think that this correlates in this way.
You'd like to pitch in, Mr. Thumer?
Yes, I think that our task is to convince the people that we cannot enjoy the positive sides of capitalism without facing the danger that capitalism means. Now the humanity faces the largest danger of war after the ending of the Cold War, but I would say that it is the largest danger after the ending of the Second World War. And I share your opinion that yes, we should return to the Organization of United Nations. It was the last document which was accepted by the humanity, and we can use the same principles, the same ideas, how to save the world. And I think that the proposals of China mean a real way out from this situation. And there is a difference between the Western capitalists, the United States and other. They say that, President Trump says that I will save American capitalism and I will save German and Western European capitalism if you follow my example. And you should do what I order to do. China never says that you should follow me and you should do what we want. China can demonstrate some examples, some achievements, and the people and the nation should decide that to go this way or not to go this way. I think that this is the new way of coexistence of the people, saving security and peace.
Because Mao Zedong said that the First and Second World War belongs to different varieties of situation, because the First World War was the imperialist victory. So the powers, they were imperialist powers. But the Second World War opened a new area thanks to the victory of the anti-fascist World War, and opened the possibility, has happened in the reality, for new area from liberate themselves from colonialism and slavery. So now the rebuild of a multipolar war means to not come back from historical point of view, but to restore a situation in which new areas from the war can continue their process of liberation that was stopped during the unipolar phase. So it's a way to regain all the goals catches during the anti-fascist World War. And that's why I was so impressed about all the activity done in China at the beginning of September with the parade and so on, that put the history and the winner of the second anti-fascist World War at the center of the political discussion, because it's a new way to discuss how to build a world in equilibrium with no imperialist powers that wanted to create a center peripheral system, but a world when different areas can reach their own goal cooperating themselves.
We've also got the chance to talk to Alexandru Lucchini, Deputy General Secretary of the Communist Party in Switzerland. Let's take a listen.
I think that the Chinese modernization show the world that economic development can be in harmony with the nature. And the Chinese important result, ecological result, are not only important for China, but for the whole humanity. And of course, there are some points in common between Europe and China on this topic. Both say that it's important to reach the carbon neutrality, but I think there is a big difference. In Europe, this goal is left to, the responsibility is left to the private companies, and this creates a lack of coordination and few results. In China, this process is guided by the state, is guided by the party, the Communist Party, and this guarantees results. And this is the big difference that I see.
Since we talked about climate change and environmental protection, let's expand scope on governance issues like that a little bit. Global governance. Yep. There are many common challenges for nearly every country in this world. So what do you make of the significance of the global governance initiative proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping?
We live in an international context full of turbulences with big transformation, and there are even more international conflicts. There is a risk of a third world war, and in this context I think that the global governance initiatives promoted by China is very important, because it gives to the world an alternative to solve international disputes through diplomacy, through dialogue, instead of unilateral power and hegemonism. And I hope that more and more countries, including Switzerland, my country, can join this initiative, important initiative.
So we've talked about many challenges and opportunities. Last but not least, I'd like to gather your thoughts on the future of the world socialist movement in the future. Let me start with you, Mr. Mantasolo.
The future of world socialism has many challenges, like we discussed first, but I see many opportunities and many good sides that we must also discuss and take into account. And again, how the young people are now bringing their own ideas into the socialist movements and communist parties. So I think that is one of the biggest themes in that. And also how we can, connect all the important struggles worldwide that working classes in many countries are facing under the same fights. That this fight and this fight for social justice and climate and anti-militarism, these are not different topics. These are the same as the same fights, and in that debate, I think that socialism is a key inspiration, an idea of building another kind of society.
Mr. Kibeli.
I'm sure that the socialist movement will grow and will win, but I have had to learn in the last 40 years that sometimes you can lose in this time and sometimes you can be thrown back. But from the direction, if mankind wants to survive, socialism must win. To help this is the job of communist parties and to make the working class able to do this.
I totally agree. I think that the objective conditions for socialism are developing and are ripe in many places. The capitalist system is in a crisis not seen before. And all this points to the direction of socialism. But socialism is not coming from it. It's not coming voluntarily.
Yeah.
No, it is man-made. So it is up to someone, and these someones could be us communists, for instance, to create the subjective conditions for this to be a reality. And I think that's the real challenge we have. But I share that there are possibilities.
What's your take, Mr. Bennett?
Well, the socialist movement, I think, is by definition a world movement. But nevertheless, at different historical periods, it falls on sometimes the individual countries to actually carry the banner of socialism. So back in November 1989, after the events in Eastern Europe, Deng Xiaoping said to Julius Nyerere of Tanzania that so long as socialism did not collapse in China, it would always be able to stand its ground in the world. And President Xi Jinping has said that had socialism collapsed in China, then world socialism may have been entered into a long historical period where it just wandered the earth like a spectre. But socialism hasn't collapsed in China. It's alive and it's developing, and I would say it's thriving. And I think that's why that was the inspiration for us to form Friends of Socialist China, because of the role that China is playing in the world. And it's not just to support China that we do this, although that's obviously important to support China, but we actually do it because we believe that socialists and working people in every country of the world have an awful lot to learn from the history of the Chinese Revolution, from what's happening in China now, and from China's role in the world. And I think related to that, the challenge is obviously to bring more and more young people into the movement, to put aside past and secondary disagreements, and because the communist and socialist forces in the world, if they concentrate on a few key points, we are agreed on 95% of things, if you think about it, but too often we want to quarrel on the 5%. And we have to put that aside. And the possibility to mobilize young people on that basis, I think is again really been highlighted in Britain certainly, but in other countries as well, by what's happening in Gaza, because, you know, millions of people in our countries know that our governments are lying to them about the reality of the situation in Palestine. And more and more people will also start to realize that if they're lying to us on that, why should they be telling the truth on China, on Venezuela, or on what's happening in any other country of the world?
Mr. Toomer.
I am optimist. There is no revolutionary situation now. But I think that the general situation is changing very quickly. And I think that this time will come. Our task is to explain to our members, to the communists, to the people, that the change will come and there is a real possibility, and we should prepare for these changes. And we explain to our comrades that when you go onto the market, on the streets, distributing the leaflets, it's a revolutionary act. If you take part in the bourgeois parliamentary election, it's also a revolutionary end. And if you study the experience of socialism with Chinese characteristic, it is also a step towards revolution.
What's your take, Mr. Marinjo?
I came from Italy. That was a country where the strongest communist party in the Western countries was set up. And now we are living the weakest situation. So in order to look at the future with optimism, from our perspective, we need to reach three goals. The first one is to innovate Marxism and to use it into the new context and new situation. The second one is the ability to self-revolutionary party building. And from this perspective, we can learn from CPC experience. And the third one is to build and make our contribution to build worldwide the strongest alliance against war that put together movements, parties, and countries that wanted to defeat the strongest and aggressiveness of imperialism. Under these three goals that are not easy, but very challenging and important, we can look at future of socialism with optimism.
Thank you very much for your insights, dear guests.
Thank you.
From Europe to Asia, from theory to practice, our dialogue today has reaffirmed that the socialist vision transcends borders and cultures. With China unveiling its 15th five-year plan, we witness a nation charting its distinct path to modernization. These are not just the policy directions, but also visionary pathways toward global stability and shared prosperity. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing. Stay tuned.